Welcome to the Mavs Fans for Life podcast. I am Landon Thomas, joined by my co-host Shahnavaz Makhani. Shahnavaz, so good to see you again.
Good to see you,
Another
brother.
season. Man, there's just been a lot that has transpired. Not much in the Mavs offseason, but big moments in those moments. And, just a lot of optimism, a lot of curiosity with this roster. But this episode, to begin the new season, we will talk about, of course, the number one pick, Cooper Flagg, who joins the Mavs, and just his fit with the Mavs and what we look forward to this season from him. And then also, it's 80's first full season. So Anthony Davis has a full training camp and a preseason with the Mavs. So that will do wonders, specifically with the coaching changes on the bench for Jason Kidd's staff and how that offense changes. We already know defensively what he does, but even offense, he's incredible when he's healthy. So let's see what he can do if he is on the court. And then rotations and lineups. Mavericks have a lot of players you can mix and match in that lineup. So Shauna, let's start with Cooper Flagg.
Ooh.
Man, what was your first reaction? Not to him being drafted. Obviously, there's no need to talk about that because everyone knew. But what was your reaction to the Mavericks getting the number one pick? Because we talked about it in the past, but what was your reaction from the Mavericks getting the number one pick to now, that transformation of what you've seen from Cooper Flagg?
Yeah, I mean, it's, for the Mavs to get the number one pick, that was just, we've like you said, we've talked about it, the craziness kind of behind that, the 1.8% chance to get a player of his caliber in a draft that, there's a lot of times you come into a draft and there's not really a consensus number one, pick, outside of guys like Wemby and Zion and AD, Kyrie, things like that. But you get arguably, the generational prospect, the first one since, Zion, consensus number one, prospect that's come out. So from then till now, I mean, you've seen him, number one, be marketed like crazy. I mean, you're talking all these different marketing opportunities that he's got. I think it uplifts the team a little bit more, especially with everything that happened last year. I mean, I think you're put into a position now where you can play a different style of basketball with the roster that the Mavericks have built. You have another player that you can build around, a young superstar. And we talk about these two timelines, and it's always, there was a lot of talk of, do you trade AD? Do you bring, do you kind of start from scratch now that you've got the number one pick? But having two timelines isn't a bad idea because you can win now. You can, Cooper Flagg doesn't have to do what a lot of number one picks have to do, and that's carry a team on their back, right? And be the focal point of the offense. He can sit back and he can learn from three future Hall of Famers in Kyrie, AD, and Clay, learn from a Hall of Fame coach, learn from role players that know what their role is, know what to do. And then you've also got young guys like PJ and Derek Lively that, is kind of, that's your foundation for the, kind of the next iteration of this team once the veterans, kind of retire and go off on their own way. So, I think it's fascinating to see. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how this roster gels together. I mean, I know we'll get into what the lineups are going to look like, but it really puts you in a position where you can play a variety of styles of basketball now and match up with different opponents based on what they're going to throw at you. And it's not just, you and I were texting about this before. Now your entire offense changes because now you're going to have, there's not one guy that's going to control the ball the entire time, right? Now you can dribble, there's going to be a lot of dribble handoffs. There's going to be a lot of ball movement. Jason Kidd talked about it, right? The flow offense, right, is what Jay Triano brings, from as one of the additions on the coaching staff, and that's going to be unbelievable to see how they're going to get everybody involved.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's unpredictable. When you game plan for the Mavericks, obviously, AD is going to get his buckets, but when you look at the totality of the roster, there's so many guys who can score, and you're going to see different facets of their game scoring, because you're used to seeing a guy like Luka who can orchestrate and, who is a puppet master where he can pull the strings and set guys up. Now it's going to be guys getting their own buckets. So it's going to be just guys hooping. And like you just said, with that, with the flow offense being implemented, you might see even more strengths in players' games that you didn't see before, especially when they're surrounded by great players. Because last year you saw it here and there, but there are so many injuries where you really didn't see a complete roster on the floor. So now you can see it, and obviously there's going to be little kinks in there where players are going to be in and out, but just from a totality of the roster being so deep, it's going to help players shine. And I think that's so perfect for Cooper Flagg's game, where, yes, of course, he's a generational talent and has the potential out of this world. But when you see the guys around him, like you said, not just the talent, but the knowledge, where have they been? Different situations of a game, even at the end of second quarters where you're about to go on halftime, you want to get a good cushion on another team, or you want to come back. Like the small things, instead of just, hey, go get rookie of the year, go put some points up on a lottery team that's not going anywhere for a few years. So I like what I see from Cooper. I think he has so much potential, and I think it's going to only help him be surrounded by great talent.
Yeah, and he's got to be a sponge, right? He's got to absorb all the knowledge that he's going to get, that he's going to take in. And you come from a program like Duke, with, that's kind of, you're already playing in the lights, right? Like he's been there, he's done it, he's been on the national stage before. He knows what it's all about, coming from a program with that pedigree and the players that they've had, the relationships with the alums of that group, guys like Jason Tatum and Derek Lively, obviously Kyrie. I mean, you talk about guys across the league that went to Duke, they know what it's about, right? So he's coming into a situation where, he knows this is going to be his team eventually, but having to not, to your point, unlike very other lottery picks that are on, really bad teams that have, going out there just throwing up meaningless stats and not winning games, he has the opportunity to start winning immediately. I mean, it's going to be very, very few rookies have that opportunity. And to be on a team like this where, to your point, if there's going to be people that are down, he's going to get the chance to play a multitude of positions, right? He's not just going to be stuck at the three. Jason Kidd has talked about, they're going to put the ball in his hands, let him be point forward. He can back up AD at the 4 if they need to. They can go small ball and put him at the 5. Who knows? There's so much versatility with this team. And especially with Cooper Flagg, he's kind of like a Swiss Army knife. So it's going to be really, really cool to see kind of what that looks like.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see his transition to, bringing the ball up and put him in uncomfortable positions, in situations of a game. And, you saw it in Summer League, and, he struggled at first, but then he bounced back really well.
Yeah.
And that's what you like seeing. You like seeing players struggle a little bit, where you have to figure it out. And that's what Jason Kidd really does, is test your mental as much as your skills on the court. He wants to put you in uncomfortable positions because he knows that playoffs is about being uncomfortable, especially when you're on the road and you don't have the comfort in being home or being surrounded by your friends and family and loved ones. So I'm excited and intrigued as well to see just the fit, because like you said, there is a fluidity on this team where you really can't talk about positions. I mean, it's just who's the 5 on the court, and that's the beauty of it. So I think that's going to help Cooper as well. And like you said, I like that you brought that up. Like, he doesn't shy away. He doesn't shy away from pressure. I mean, he went to Duke, and all his games are on TV, and he has the pressure every day he steps on the court. Not just now, but he did in college. So, being the number 1 pick, and I think also playing against these players in the USA camp, that really helped his confidence as well, because he's a confident player, obviously, with his talent. But being able to produce against the top USA players, when you looked at what he did against them in practice, and he really shined. So I think he's going to be, I think he's going to have a good first season. But I don't think it's tough with him because, he might really shine right out the gate, where because his game is not just scoring. Like he does a lot of things really well, especially on the defensive end. And I think defense leads the offense. So I'm excited to see that as well. But I think you're going to see more of a all-around game in the NBA, especially handling the ball and playmaking. And then you saw it Duke.
Yeah, and he's not. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to come in with the expectation of him throwing up 30 points a game eventually. Obviously not in his rookie year, but obviously when he's forever going to be compared to a guy like Luka just because of Luka being on this team for the last 8 years, and now Cooper Flagg kind of is the face of the team, and so there's always going to be that comparison, but completely different players, right? Cooper doesn't have the offensive game that Luka does, but Luka doesn't have nearly the defensive game that Cooper Flagg does. Cooper Flagg comes in polished on that end of the court, and I think that's going to be his calling card right out the gate. Is we're going to see him tested up against the best players on the opposing team. You've got the ability now. You mentioned it, fluidity, right? The ability to switch defenders, and the length and size that this team has, especially in the front court, is unparalleled to anybody else in the league right now. And so you can put him in uncomfortable positions, like you said. Let him learn. Let him guard the opponent's best player. And I think he's just going to grow from there. The offensive game will come. That comes in practice. That comes from playing with guys like Kyrie and Clay who can help him, with the shooting motion and help him to shoot better. That can all come. But defense, that's all. Defensively, it's instinct, it's body type, it's having that ruggedness, which we've seen him have it at Duke. We've seen it in training camp, the abilities that he has. So I feel like that's going to be what we're going to see right out the gate from him. And I think that's going to be it's going to be super impressive to watch him go up against some of these all-stars. And to your point, you talk about Jason Kidd making him uncomfortable. It did the same thing with Giannis, and Giannis credits a lot to to his game, the way he kind of built his game. He credits a lot of that to Jason Kidd. And if Jason Kidd can do the same with Cooper Flagg, that's scary for the rest of the league if Cooper Flagg even becomes half of what Giannis is.
Yeah, I agree. And then also, it kind of reminds me of a situation like Kawhi Leonard. Like, he was surrounded by so much talent, and he really locked in on his role where he wasn't forced to be great right away. Like, he eased into his role since the team had a lot of talent, and you saw him shine defensively before the offense came. And I think that's what you'll see with Cooper. Obviously, he'll have more offensive load with Kyrie out, but I think that will only be better in the long run for the Mavericks, especially this season, if and when Kyrie comes back. So there's so much. The sky's the limit for him. Honestly, it's just what he fit. So, you just mentioned front court, Sean. So Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis has a full training camp preseason with the Mavericks. We saw what that did for Kyrie. They went to the finals right after that. So, when you look at AD, obviously, there's been some marks about his weight and stuff, but that's so pointless. But just, he said he's already lost 5 pounds, and he's playing, he comes into training camp like 10 to 12 pounds over, so he can play into his shape instead of coming into training camp in his playing shape and then lose. And then he's skinny and he can't handle the 5, because he is going to play some 5. But, when you look at Anthony Davis and where he's at in his career and the opportunity that he has ahead of him, because even though there's been at times where he was the Lakers' best player, it's about LeBron. It's always about LeBron, no matter what. Even that finals MVP that LeBron got, it should have been AD, So now he has the opportunity to be the guy, especially with Kyrie out. He has the chance to get back to the Pelicans with a better supporting cast. That version of AD where he is the man, and, he is a bona fide, 5 to 10 best player in the league. What do you see his fit now that he has a full offseason with the Mavericks?
AD is one of those players I think that you could literally pick and put him on any team and he fits. Just his versatility, his ability to, as a two-way player. We've talked about this. When he's healthy, he's, in my mind, no doubt a top 10 player in the league. For him, it's all about health, right? From a front court perspective, he's arguably top 3 defensively. right there with Giannis, as the best defenders in the front court. Throw Wemby in there, obviously, if you want.
Yep.
But it's not the defense I'm worried about. For him, it's health. We saw what he can do in that Houston game. The one kind of full game that he played before he got injured. We saw what he's capable of, and I don't think anybody doubts that. I think people forget who Anthony Davis is because of what happened last year and because of the trade and all that. He kind of, people treat him like a throw-in or kind of like a throwaway player the Lakers gave up. We forget how good Anthony Davis is when he's healthy, and I think he's on a mission to show that. I think he has a chip on his shoulder to prove that, hey, look, everyone forgot about me, right? Everyone talks about, this was a mistake and I'm not a good player and blah, blah, blah. Players take that personally, right? And especially a guy like AD who's been there, played in the shadow of LeBron, even though he was a better player than LeBron, in that championship season, right? To your point, he was in the shadow. It was all about LeBron. Now is the time for AD to come and say, I'm here. You guys forgot about me. And I think he's going to play with a chip on his shoulder, especially with guys like Kyrie, who's a great leader, who Kyrie is going to give him that motivation as well. They go back a long way in terms of friendship. Clay is another guy who's been there, he knows what it takes to win a title. He's been with players where, played with obviously Steph and Kevin Durant, where he knows what that feeling is of, I've got to prove myself again. Same thing with Clay when he came in last year, right? I think we're going to see a version of Anthony Davis we haven't seen in a long time. Now, again, for him, it's health. We're not asking him to play 82 games, but if he can play 55, 60 games, I think you're going to see all-star level Anthony Davis. And I think with the depth of this team, there's opportunities for him to rest throughout the regular season. He doesn't have to play 40 minutes a game. He can play 30. He can play 32 minutes, sit back and let PJ, you've got PJ Washington to be able to come in. Cooper Flagg can play the 4. You've got Najee Marshall. You've got Caleb this team is so deep that they don't have to, they really don't have to overuse any of their personnel. Maybe in the backcourt, until Kyrie gets back, but you still have guys like D'Angelo Russell. You still have Cooper, if Cooper Flagg's going to handle the ball a lot, especially with a guy like Jay Triano. When he was the assistant coach with Sacramento, they basically played without a point guard after the De'Aaron Fox trade last year, and they were third in offensive efficiency. So, and I think they led the league in dribble handoffs as well throughout last year. So, instilling that type of new offense, and even when you don't have a true point guard for half the season or however long Kyrie's going to be out, there are ways to get around that, right? And so I really think as long as Anthony Davis stays healthy, because that's obviously the biggest point, I think we're going to see a level of AD we haven't seen in a lot of years. And I think when you come in, you've got a full training camp. Finally, you've got more time to learn the offensive system, play with your teammates, understand everyone's game, how it fits together. We've seen how that works. You mentioned it with Kyrie coming in here. So I really truly think that we're going to see a level of Anthony Davis we haven't seen since, peak, New Orleans level AD.
Yeah, I agree with you. And especially we talked about it with Cooper Flagg. Anthony Davis doesn't have to shoulder the load as much. So the pressure isn't on him as much, even though, the pressure might be on him as, be the number one guy again since the Pelicans. But, the pressure isn't there when, like you said, like he has the guys around him, and he has not the guys around him just talent wise, but the fit wise. He has defensive guys around him. And that's what's the beauty of it is he's also playing power forward. He's going to play center some, especially now, with Gafford. Hopefully he's ready for the season opener. But, it's back to it's back to his way. It's back to being what he wants to do his way, because when he has it his way, he's a special talent, and it's something that you cannot replicate for what he does offensively and defensively. And I think he's going to get back to that with the Mavericks, and just the chip on your shoulder. No matter how great you've been in your career, you always have a chip on your shoulder. If you don't, then you're retiring, because that drive for him to be great, and not only, like you said, be a great player, but put respect on his name, because he is undervalued and underrated. But it also, on the flip side, deals with health, like you said, because that comes with it is health. He did he did good the last couple of years before this freak accident with the Mavericks. But you saw when he's healthy, the brother be hooping. Like the brother be hooping. Like you saw, I know everyone talks about the one half against the Rockets or the play-in game, but when you see those efforts, especially for a team that you just joined, like he's trying to prove something. Yeah, he's trying to prove something. Maybe not only to the Mavs fans, like you said, because the hoopla around that trade and being under LeBron's shadow, but he's proven it to himself.
Yeah,
you know, he's proven it to himself. Hopefully, those goggles have a great prescription. Hopefully,
Kareem had to wear goggles of it.
Yes, Kareem, you know, hey, there you go. So, you know, maybe that's giving him a little inspiration. Maybe he's watching some Kareem clips. I mean, he mentioned Kareem. He also mentioned Horace Grant.
Yeah.
But, you know, we can laugh at it now because his eye is good now. And just a freak. He has a lot of freak accidents where it injures him.
It's like Derek Lively. A lot of Derek Lively's injuries are all just freak. Like somebody falls on him and he gets hurt, and it's just like, come on, man! Like you got to be kidding me. You know?
Yes.
The one thing that concerns me with this roster, and it'll be interesting to see what this looks like. But the Mavs didn't shoot the three ball well, and didn't attempt a lot of threes. I think they were second lowest in the league last year after the trades. In a league where the 3-point game is revolutionized the way, people ball and it now it's all drive to the hoop or take a three. There's, the mid-range game is lost. Sacramento led the league in mid-range shots last year under Jay Triano. Anthony Davis is a good mid-range shooter, but outside of Klay Thompson and obviously Kyrie, it's kind of like, well, where's that impact going to come from behind the arc? And I think that's going to be the biggest question is if Anthony Davis is playing in the low post. We've heard Derek Lively is going to have the ability to take a couple long range shots this year. We've got to see PJ Washington get better, at shooting the ball, especially from the corners. He, during that finals run, he was amazing, and kind of, fell off a little bit last year. I'm looking at a guy like Max Christie, who can really come in and I think has the ability to step up, play that role off the bench, to be a shooter. We saw glimpses of it last year. He's kind of what we wanted in Josh Green a little bit, right? He's got that athleticism. He plays defense well, but we saw the offensive impact he can have. And I think he's going to be a really important piece coming off the bench, a guy who can come in and give you some buckets outside the arc. If the low post is kind of the main way that Dallas is going to run their offense, right? You've got to have perimeter shooting around that in case there's a double team that comes. So that's going to be really interesting to see. But I think this is an opportunity. Obviously, we know what Klay can do and Kyrie can do, but guys like Max Christie, D'Angelo Russell, can they just be serviceable enough from deep where it, defensively, I think this team's going to be fine. They're going to be in a lot of games because of their defense. Yeah. But offensively, can you score enough to overcome some of these opponents like Golden State, like at Denver, some of these top teams in the West that shoot the three ball really well?
Yeah, that concern is valid. You don't want to rely on just Klay. You definitely want to have PJ continue to rise as a 3-point shooter. You want Najee to get better. You want Max to really show out on the 3-point line this season. And you want D'Lo. You want the old D'Lo where he was a good 3-point shooter, past couple of years. But you look at the situation. There's always context to it, too. I think D'Lo is going to be a great 3-point shooter this season, just with the talent around him, because there's going to be a lot of attention elsewhere. And I think he's very streaky, but I think he will have some sort in his situation that he's in. He knows his role. He knows Kyrie is the guy. He knows he's the glue-in guy, and when Kyrie comes back, he's going to be the backup point guard. So, I think him being comfortable with his role and the structure around him, especially when Jason Kidd as coach, there's no second guessing, questioning what's going on. Like Jason Kidd will tell you like it is through a player's lens. I think those are the type of things where I think D'Lo will be a good 3-point shooter this season. And like you said, Derek Lively, he has to shoot 2 or 3. He doesn't have to, but it's needed, because when you look at his career so far, defenses drop when he's at the 3-point line. and he's waiting for the pass. Like, he's got to shoot those. I don't want him shooting a lot because he is really underrated at everything offensively. We know defense, but offensively, he's really good. He just doesn't, he locked into his role. And I think hopefully this season you really see Derek Lively because his post-up game is nice. Like his hook shots, his spin moves, his little Hakeem shake is really nice, but they didn't do it much. And then obviously they did a lot of the pick and roll, the short roll passes. That's really good. And, he's a great finisher. The vertical spacing that he provides the team as well, I think just 2 to 3, a game is going to do wonders for his career. Not only him, but the Mavs too, because it's unpredictable. Like Lively's about to set a screen. Oh, he's going to roll and then watch the pass or the dunk. No, he might pop a couple times and shoot the three. And then you got Davis in the block. Like there's so many different outcomes.
It just takes him hitting 1 or 2 of those for defenses to not drop right off those screens. If you're going to drop on a pick and roll and you're going to leave Derek Lively wide open, if he hits a couple of those, now the defense has to be like, whoa, wait a second. We can't just drop coverage on this guy. We've got to play up and go through the pick and roll. Well, then that leaves, if Derek Lively's going to stay out, that leaves the paint wide open then for AD to cut in, Cooper Flagg to cut in. Maybe you've got, D'Lo in the corner. It gives you so many other options just having that threat behind the arc. He doesn't have to hit it every time, but knowing that he'll take that shot, it gives the defense pause in schematically what they're going to do.
Agree. And you look at a guy like Bam Adebayo, he wasn't shooting any threes on like what 0.5, 0.6 every season attempts a game. And now, last season he shot 2.8 attempts a game for threes. It just unlocks a different level of your game, and also not just your game, but the spacing. Mm-hmm. The spacing is going to do wonders because AD, he's like, he's like a guy that can just roam around. And I think that's what he likes, especially defense. But offense, like when you have, Lively pop a few times a game, that sets up so much space for he's mid-range or on the block, or he can go to the post and get a dunk. Like you, as a defender, you have to keep your eyes all over. Then you got Cooper, then you got PJ, then you got all these guys going on, and like, dang, that's going to make the defense really struggle. So I think that's the one thing that they can do. Yeah, because I agree. That's the only concern that I have. Obviously, you would like to see D'Lo because he's really a wild card. So I think 3-point shooting and which D'Lo are the Mavs getting? Because he's a very underrated passer. He's a streaky shooter. He's when he's going, he's really good. It feels like he's been around forever. He's only 29.
Yeah, and what he was, with the Lakers, and he gets traded to the Nets, and it's for a guy like D'Lo, you kind of feel, what was he, the second pick in the draft, third pick in the draft, something like that, right? It kind of feels like he was discarded to the Nets, right, in that Dorian Finney-Smith trade from the Lakers, and so for him, again, we talk about the motivation, right, to come in. He chose to play in Dallas, right? I mean, the rumors were swirling, but he wanted to play here, right? He knows a lot of the guys that are on the team and felt
AD
comfortable.
said he had offers with more
money, yeah, and he wanted to come here. Obviously getting the chance to start, but then even playing behind Kyrie Irving, that's a great way to learn, and he's still 29. I mean, he's still young. So, I think for D'Lo, he's also got a chip on his shoulder to show that, hey, look, I'm not just a streaky shooter. I'm not just, I'm not a guy who's just going to be, in Brooklyn, could do whatever you want, right? Like nobody cared. You're just jacking up shots. You're putting up your numbers. Now you're in a structured offense. You have, you're in a system. You're at a place where they want to win. And I think that matters, right?
Yeah.
Coming from
a juice back too.
Exactly. Coming from teams that have been bad, for his entire career. Now you're on a team that has championship aspirations. And to your point about D'Lo as a passer, I was just thinking about this. I want to look at the end of the year, and I have a bet. I'm going to make a prediction. I think the Mavericks are going to be one of, if not the highest team in terms of cutting to the basket. I think when you you were talking about, with Derek Lively, if he's picking and popping, and you've got AD down to the low block, well, then if you have PJ cutting in, Cooper Flagg, we know is a great cutter. Clay, we've seen Clay cut to the basket. Guys like Najee, who has a great floater, right? Like, I think the Mavericks are going to be at the top. Dante Exum, I think they're going to be near or at the top of the league in terms of cuts to the basket and probably points in the paint, to be honest, as well. Like, I think this team is that's kind of what their focal point is going to be. It's just really offensively, it's can they hit enough threes to stay in the game? That's going to be pretty much what, in my mind, what it's going to come down to offensively. Is they just need to be serviceable in that aspect of their game, and I think they're going to surprise a lot of people.
Yeah. So, you talked about all the players. That leads us to our third topic. Rotations, lineups. Obviously, Gafford, 2 to 3 weeks, but that aligns him to the opener. So he won't miss much time at the beginning of the season, if not making the opener with a rolled ankle. But Brandon Williams 1 week, but those aren't small injuries. When you look at what the Mavericks have outside of Kyrie, because we know that's going to be a while. This is a deep team. This is a very deep team. When you look at this roster, even like the bottom of the roster, Caleb Martin, Brandon Williams and Jaden Hardy, like
Dennis Smith Jr. if he makes the team,
if he makes it, or Exum, like if they're battling for position, like that's at the bottom of the roster. Usually that's the backups for the Mavs. So it's like when you look at the team in the lineups, too deep. Obviously, D'Lo is a plug-in guy for Kyrie, but what do you think of the lineups? There's positional change where you could have, you have Max Christie, Klay Thompson, you have PJ, Cooper, you got Lively and Gaff. Obviously, AD is going to be there. So, what do you make of the deep team that Kid has?
Yeah, I mean, I think having a deep team is, we saw how critical that is last year with the number of injuries the Mavs suffered. You've got to have depth. Otherwise you're going to be in a situation where you literally are calling up your two-way players and having them start games. So I think having a deep roster like this is great. It allows you to kind of manage minutes a little bit better, right? Especially for guys like AD. Guys like Clay, they don't have to play, as many minutes against, bad teams. You can pull them early in the fourth quarter of blowout wins or losses, give them a chance to rest, recuperate. The interesting part for me, I think we know what the front court's going to be, right? In terms of, AD and Lively, we know Cooper's going to start. The question are the Mavs going to go big and go Cooper at the 2 and PJ at the 3, or is Clay going to start at the 2 and Coop at the 3? I think that's going to be the interesting thing. And, I understand the need for continuity and kind of keeping the lineups the same throughout, game to game. But I think there's an argument to be made where you can change the starting lineup on a nightly basis, depending on who your opponent is, right? If you're going up a team with a lot of size, maybe Clay comes off the bench that game, right? Maybe, you've got Cooper in at the 2 and PJ in at the 3 when you need a little bit more size. If you're going up against a smaller team, or a faster team, maybe that's got some quicker guards. Maybe you're flipping that around and putting Clay in. I mean, I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see what that lineup is, when they tip off against San Antonio. But just the flexibility and versatility of this lineup is crazy, because I think everybody can kind of play different positions, right? Nobody's locked into, one role outside of, Lively and Gafford pretty much, but everyone else can really, play a multitude of positions. And so really you've got the ability to mix and match your roster and your lineups depending on what the opponent throws at you. Even with your bench guys, guys like Najee, we've talked about, he can play basically all 5 positions. We saw him as a point guard last year, right? So, you've got that ability where you can mix and match and you can go up against anybody in the league with the players that you've got because of the versatility of this roster.
Yeah, and I should have pointed out, but it's great thing that the Mavericks extended PJ and Gafford, because of course they're very embodied into the Mavericks new culture, defensive culture, and just playing for the Mavericks. You could tell they really love being here. Obviously PJ from here, and Gafford close, he got family close in Arkansas and he loves being here. But you know, now you don't have any worry about, and of course, like, yeah, you could say they love it here, but when you're in a contract year, like there's still moments where you don't want to go, all out. Yes, these are NBA players. They play all out every game, but I'm talking about like one injury could ruin your future, or if you're having a bad stretch of games, that could really mess you up, your psyche, your mental state when you're on a contract year. So now that you have long-term stability here with Dallas, you really have a lot of guys who are locked into the success of the team collectively. Like, I think you're going to see guys who, even Clay said it a little bit. He doesn't care about minutes. He doesn't care about how many points. He doesn't want a 50, 40, 90 season. But like, he doesn't care about individual stats. He just wants to become more of, be a better person as a veteran, but also, go out and with a bang with the Mavericks. Like, he wants to go out, these last few years to really show that he eased well into his transition with the Mavericks and hopefully get a ring. But I think that's going to help the team, is everyone being bought in. So it doesn't matter who starts. Gaff talked about it. He said, last year when they're having conversations with Lively about who's starting, both of them were like, hey, whoever starts, whoever comes off the bench, it doesn't matter. Like, just have the same production where it doesn't even matter who starts or who comes off the bench, because y'all are still playing so good.
Yeah, you've got to be selfless, right? So with a team like this, to be able to win a championship, it takes being selfless, everyone being bought in. We've seen it time and time again, where if you've got somebody who's trying to get their own, trying to be selfish, it doesn't work, right? These teams where you've had multiple superstars. Look at Golden State, prime example, right? Steph, yes, Clay, and KD all had to sacrifice something to win titles. So Clay knows obviously what that's all about. So everyone's got to buy into the system. Everyone's got to buy into what the identity of this team is and what they're trying to accomplish. And I think you've got a good group of guys that understand that, right? A mix of veterans who have been there, who have done it, right? They've won, they know what it takes. And then you've got guys like AD, obviously, who's a part of that first group, but also guys that are trying to prove that, hey, I'm not, don't forget about me. I'm still a good player in this league. Guys like AD and D'Lo, and then obviously the young guys, in Max Christie and Cooper Flagg, who are trying to make names for themselves. I mean, I think it's an oddly weird, but very interesting and very good fit when you look at it, right? And the concerns we've talked about are valid from a shooting perspective, but if the Mavericks can just be, decent in that area, I think their defense and their inside game is going to carry them a lot further than, at least in the regular season standings than I think what a lot of people think.
So if you're a kid, who's the starting lineup?
Man, in my mind, I think I would go Russell, Clay, Coop, AD, and Lively. Because I think having PJ come off, I think you need that shooting of Clay in the starting lineup. I think without him in the starting lineup, you kind of get too bogged down in terms of everyone trying to drive in the paint. You need that solidified, 3-point specialist in your starting lineup. And your bench, then, I mean, just really you can, you're able to bring in guys like Najee and PJ and whether it's Exum or Dennis Smith, Max Christie, it just, Caleb Martin. We don't even talk about Caleb Martin. I mean, the versatility you've got then, that where you can rotate out, AD when you need to, you can move AD to the 5 and bring in PJ when you need to. I think it gives you a lot more versatility to have PJ come off the bench as opposed to Clay coming off the bench.
Yeah, I like it. Honestly, if it was me, what I would like to see happen is be unpredictable. Like, and when I say that, I'm regarding as put Coop, PJ, AD, and Lively out there and see what happens. Obviously with D'Lo, because you can't have Kyrie yet, but just see what happens. But you brought up a good point with 3-point shooting, so you have to have Clay. You have to have a guy that has the trigger that can just shoot the clip in any time, especially his daggers hurt you. Like, that's what kept the Mavs in a lot of games last year, even though they had all these injuries. Like, he can make like 3 in a row, like, and that really changed the trajectory of the game.
And he doesn't need a lot of space either, right? He's a guy who can, with a guy bodied up on him, he can still hit those.
Yeah, and I also want to see it's tough because I think Max Christie has a lot of potential. I really, but he's also young. So, you're on a win now team. Like you said, the two timelines really works because, you can go all for it now. And in a few years, you still have Cooper who will be 22. Like in 4 years.
Unbelievable.
That's crazy.
That he's it's mind blowing. He's this good at 18.
Yes. And you still have Max, you have Lively, you have PJ who will be like just turning 30. You have Gafford, that's what I'm saying. Like you
basically have your starting lineup, in 4 years, you've got them on the team right now.
And that's why I think if you have a bought-in collective roster, then you can have PJ off the bench. You can have Najee off the bench. You can have Christie off the bench. Like, you can have D'Lo off the bench when Kyrie comes back. You have Gaff or Lively. It doesn't 1A, 1B off the bench. That's a starting lineup in the league right now. Like, that's better than a lot of lottery teams. So, I agree with you for now. But if PJ is, that's tough because I think he's a glue guy, but you can have that. You can have those attributes in Cooper Flagg. So when Cooper comes off the court, it's just like Gafford and Lively. Like, you're not missing anything when he comes off the court, and I think that's the beauty of it. Like when you have PJ, you have Najee, and you have Christie coming the game, and Gafford or Lively. You're still hurting teams. Like, you're still going at their necks.
Yeah, and I think the really crucial part of that is you don't have to change your schemes, your offensive scheme, because everyone plays the same way, right?
Yeah.
You talked about it. You switch out Coop and PJ, the very similar style, right? Lively, Gafford. Obviously, we saw them go, kind of in tandem last year. You don't have to change a thing. You can play, you play the same way that you're playing because everybody does. Everyone's game is kind of very similar, right? Everyone's got a fluid game, but it's, they're all kind of, very similar in the way that they, in their skill sets. So I think that ability to have that continuity with your bench players coming in, I think is going to be really, really critical as well.
Okay, Sean, great first episode. I missed you, man.
I missed you too, buddy.
It's been some time. So
it's been a while.
It's going to be a very, very intriguing season. The Mavs could be really good just based on their defense. With this roster, they have to be a top 10 defense. They should be a top 5 just based on the talent that they have in place. But to be seen. And then I just want to ask you for the last word. What's one thing that you're looking forward to in preseason?
Ooh, one thing I'm looking forward to in the preseason. Dennis Smith Jr., man. I'm excited.
Yes.
I'm excited he's back, man.
Go get your roster spot.
Go get your spot. Get it from whoever you got to take it from. Get it. I want him on the team. I missed him. I really liked him, when he played here. And I think he gives you much needed depth in the backcourt. He's also kind of a guy who's playing with a chip on his shoulder. He's still young, he's a guy that, really has, is trying to out to prove something, and coming back here to Dallas. I think it's kind of a full circle moment. So I want to see him, see what he's still got in the tank, during the preseason. I'm sure he's going to get some run with the second unit, and take your roster spot, man. Get it from whoever you got to get it from. But I want to see you on this team.
Yeah, I like that pick. Yeah, especially when you go overseas, and he's done really good, and for transitioning his reputation around the league.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everyone thought, he's a dunk guy. He does a lot of dunks. He's athletic, but he really transitioned his reputation to he's a great defender. He's a really good defender, and I think with the team's identity as defense. Go show that you got it. Go take it. And when you're overseas and then you come back to have an opportunity back in the NBA, you don't take that for granted. So I agree. That's a good one. But I'm gonna say just D'Lo, because he really is the wild card to sustain the Mavericks until Kyrie comes back, if and when that is. So this is he took less money to come here to show that he still has it. I mean, when you're 32, after 32, you really take these type of deals. But like, he's 29, so because you would think get as much money as you can until you're like 32, 33. But like now, he's 29 and he's taking less money to show that he still has it. So it's like a pride thing. It's not a financial thing. It's a pride thing. And I want to see what he does with this roster around him to really show, hey, now the Mavericks have a steel contract. And I'm also get my reputation around the league that I still have it. And who knows? He might be a Jason Terry where he stays as the Mavs backup PG for a while, at combo guard for a while. And he might, and that's the beauty of the lineup. You can play him with Kyrie.
Yep, 100%.
All right, Shahnavaz, can't wait for this season. Good to see you. Good to talk to you like always.
Yes, sir.
And we appreciate y'all tuning in to the first episode of this season. Make sure y'all follow us. You see the handles on the screen. And also thanks for the continuous support, with our brand and also myself with my mom. We appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching.